I'm going to say that again on the recording here as well. So you guys, as you're hopping on. So if you have questions as we go tonight, just feel free to pop them in the chat as we go. If I see them as we go, I will answer them. But if, otherwise I can answer them at the very end. We had a little bit of a hiccup with the Zoom link. So my apologies there. We just reset out the Zoom link again. So hopefully we'll have some people hop on here late. But I am so excited that you're here. Whether you participated in our hormone health group last week where we talked a lot about endocrine disruption, or maybe you just saw the invitation to hop on and learn more about hormone health. I'm glad that you've taken the time to do that. We're going to keep this under an hour as best we can. I do want to save some time at the very end for questions, make sure that we have plenty of time so that if you do want to unmute yourself or simply just get your questions answered, I want to make sure we have time for that as well. So let me just kick things off. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I do have some slides for you. Give me 1 second here to get it set up. All right, let's try this one more time. Share screen. Oh, is it not going to let me do this? This is fun. Hang on 1 second. Ah, here we go. Okay, don't mind my desktop. I always give people the disclaimer that yes, this is how my brain works. Lots of tabs open at one time. But I can't be alone. Somebody else here has to be the same way. All right, perfect. So tonight we're going to be diving into this subject of normal is not optimal. It's become my new favorite phrase. I say it all the time when women are on social media and I see conversations around hormone health, or I see things pop up about, well, I talked to my doctor about it and they told me everything was normal with my lab work. I'm always the girl that chimes in the comments and says, well, hey, normal is not optimal. There's actually a deeper conversation that can be had. So we're going to talk about that tonight. Truly, if we wanted to, we could go for hours. I just recently did a little group of 16 women, like a little church group I was asked to speak at just a couple weeks ago. We went 3 hours from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. And on my way home that night, I thought of like 30 other things that I wanted to mention and answer and talk about. We didn't have time to do that. So we're going to touch on all the highlights tonight. We're going to make sure that you guys get the information that you need to really understand how to go deeper for yourself and what that might look like. I'll kick things off by just saying a little bit about myself. I don't want to spend too much time here, but in case you didn't, if you weren't in the hormone health group last week, or if you've not met me before, my name is Jenny Swisher. I'm a certified personal trainer, nutritionist, course creator of 3 different digital courses related to hormone health, and an integrative health practitioner. If you would have told me, 20 years ago that I would be in hormone health, I would have really given you an odd look because my background was actually in English writing and communications. I thought I would work in book publishing. But really quickly after securing what I thought was my dream job out of college, marrying my high school sweetheart, all the things were happening for me in my early 20s. I got that corner office job at a book publisher here in Indianapolis, and things were going smoothly until they weren't. I started suffering from migraines, and I got diagnosed with chronic migraine to the point where I actually had to go on disability from work. I had to have the fluorescent lighting popped out from above my office when I did return to work, and things were really, really dark. And I say that pun intended, like it was a really dark time in my life. I was newly married. I was struggling with these migraines, and they had kind of just come on. I had had them through, high school life and college years, but for some reason they just got a lot worse in my early 20s. So fast forward through a lot of different struggles, right? I did everything you can imagine for migraine. I'm sure if you're listening to this, you know someone who struggles with migraine. Women they tend to be 2/3 of migraine sufferers. But I just kept digging and trying to figure out why this was happening for me, and I wasn't getting anywhere. I like to tell people that I was looking for my Dr. House, right? I was looking for that guy. If you've ever seen the old TV show, I wanted the doctor who was going to be like, aha, you have mold in your gutter. This is the problem. Like, this is exactly what you need to do. You just need to get rid of the mold and you'll be good, right? But I didn't find that doctor. I sat in probably 14 different neurologists and spinal specialist offices. I tried tons of different pharmaceuticals. I did Botox for migraine, acupuncture, all the things. Chinese medicine all the way to modern medicine. I even had 4 neck surgeries to ablate nerves in my neck because they thought for sure that if they just cauterized the nerves, it would stop the headaches. But sure enough, it didn't. And so I found myself in my late 20s. This was 5 years of chronic migraine later. I was on a walk with my good friend Jen, who's also my yoga instructor, and she's still my very best friend. And I told her, I said, Jen, I've just come to this conclusion that I'm just going to carry around my painkiller, my migraine medication in my pocket. I'm going to take it in the morning so that I can function. And I'll have my husband take me to urgent cares on the weekend if I need injections to get through the weekend. And this is just the way I'm going to live. And she looked at me and she said something really pivotal, which might sound sort of hokey right now in the moment, but at the time, it ended up being a really pivotal turning point for me. She said, Jenny, you can't give up because you are your own best doctor. So here I had been 5.5 years sitting in doctor's offices looking for that doctor house, really putting the authority of my health on a doctor, on any doctor who could help. When in reality, she sort of turned that and flipped that on its head and told me that I needed to figure this out, that this was my body, that I needed to become more body literate of myself and really start to dig deeper. So from that moment on, I became really just invested in learning more about my body, right? Through fitness, through nutrition, through sleep, supplementation. Like I started just kind of perusing the aisles at Fresh Time and Whole Foods. Like, what are these aisles? These health foods aisles, right? I grew up on a farm. When I told my dad in high school that I wanted to be a vegetarian, I grew up on a beef farm, I should say. I told my dad I wanted to be a vegetarian, and he said, "Go to your room." So that should tell you kind of how I grew up, right? I grew up on just Hamburger Helper, all the meat and potato type of meals, and I really wasn't super educated in nutrition. So around that time, I was introduced to a network marketing company that was a home fitness based company, right? P90X, that sort of stuff, Shakeology. Some of you might have heard of that. And I dove right in. I was craving this information. I was craving learning more about my body, and this was a tool that I used to do it. So I started doing that and just slowly became more and more interested in how I could take control of what I could control. And there might be some of you listening that are like, how could you do P90X with a migraine? But if you've ever struggled with chronic pain, you understand when I tell you that sometimes you just need a distraction. So yes, I would do the workouts in pain. I would do the push-ups and all the things with the migraine because I felt like for that hour, I wasn't thinking about the headache. I was thinking about something else. So I became really interested and obsessed really with exercise. I got my certified personal training license, my nutrition license. I went on to open a gym here in Indianapolis, a 4,000 square foot facility where I trained clients in full body transformation. So I would bring them in for 90 days. I would coach them 4 to 6 days per week in their exercise. I would also guide them on their nutrition. And I started to see something that I had experienced myself, right? So when I was dealing with the migraines, guess what? I was also dealing with low energy. I was also dealing with lack of libido. I was also dealing with weight gain, especially around my hips and thighs. I wasn't thinking about that because I was so concerned with the migraine, but all those things were happening for me as well. So when I look back on that journey, right, exercise got me interested and got me moving and got that energy back up. But I still couldn't quite get there until I really got to the root cause of what was going on for me with the migraines and in my health, which we'll talk more about as we go tonight. But I started to see something in the gym. I started to see that my male clients and my female clients were really different. They would come into the gym, they would sign up for 90 days of transformation. And my male clients would say, I don't want your shake. I'm just going to do the workouts. I eat what my wife makes, right? They would come like 50% of the time. And over the course of 90 days, they would have incredible transformations. They would lose weight around their waist. They would have higher energy. They would have more muscle tone. And my women, although they would see results, right? They would still see results. They would feel better. A lot of them still struggled to lose the weight. And a lot of them still struggled to really reach that maximum energy, like I like to call it. So I saw firsthand that men and women are not the same, that we can't treat them the same, that their bodies are different. There's different stressors. The menstrual cycle certainly impacts things. It has to, right? And these are things that I started to see, but I didn't understand because I'm not a scientific researcher. And so in 2019, my life coach said to me, Jenny, have you ever heard of Dr. Stacy Sims? And I said, no. So the next thing I did was I picked up a book written by Dr. Stacy Sims, and it was everything I was looking for. It was everything that I was experiencing, both in my own body and with my female clients. It was all about hormone health and how we could really look at all the things, exercise, nutrition, sleep, supplementation, all these different aspects. We could look through a different lens for women. And so I heard her say on a TED Talk, I heard her say these words that women are not small men. And for decades, research has been done on the male body. And when researchers are asked why they don't research women, their answer is very simple. They say because women are too complex given their hormones. So it hasn't been until the last 12 to 13 years that we finally have research on women that show us that we have to look through this different lens. We have to look at the female body differently because it is different. So we're going to dive into some of that tonight. We're going to talk about how the female body is different. We're going to talk about root cause medicine. Like I said, we're going to hit all the highlights. But I really became just engrossed in her content and information. I took both of her courses. I also took additional courses in hormone health. I became an integrative health practitioner all around the same time because I wanted to share this information. Like once you learn this, you can't unlearn it, right? So I was like, wow, every gym in America is teaching a calories in, calories out model. They're treating the female body like the male body, and women everywhere are suffering and stuck. They're not able to lose the weight. They're not able to regain that energy. They're not sleeping well. Most likely, they might even be struggling in their relationships and in their life because this isn't part of our society. Everything is catered to the male body. So that's a little bit as to how I got here. When people say, how did you get into hormone health? I say, well, very unfortunately, it wasn't by plan. It was through my own struggle. In 2020, when I launched my course, I did so because one of my mentors, my business mentors, I heard him say this on a podcast. He said, "You are most qualified to serve the person you once were." And I started thinking about the 13 years of health coaching that I had done in the home fitness arena, how I had built my team up to a top team in the network. It was an amazing feeling getting messages from people that were like, thank you for helping me lose the weight. Thank you for helping me, keep up with my kids again. And those were awesome, awesome messages. But I wanted to do something more. I craved to go deeper. And I knew that if I shared my own struggle through both chronic migraines and infertility, there's more to my story than just the migraines. But if I started to share my story of hormone imbalance, if I could become more vulnerable in the service of other women, that other women could learn this information too, and they could apply it to their life. So that's how the course was born. We'll talk more about that later. But the Sync course is really what started things. From there, we launched a podcast. From there, we launched a whole bunch of other things, which we'll dive into tonight. But at the root of all of it, it's because I really want to help women. I want to turn around and look over my shoulder and say, hey, I've been where you are. I understand the struggle. I'm sick of also being told that I'm normal when I certainly don't feel that way. And I want to help you really reach that optimal energy. So let's start first with energy. So I always like to start, no matter who I'm talking to, with this principle of everything should be measured in energy. So diet culture teaches us to measure things by the number on the scale, or by the size of our clothes, or by the look in the mirror. But really, I want you to think about your energy. At the end of the day, when you're in your 70s, 80s, 90s, right, we want to be able to get up and down off the floor. We want to be able to play with our grandkids. We want to be able to avoid a nursing home. By the way, did you know that the number one reason for women and men to go into a nursing home is sarcopenia, which is muscle loss? The inability to get up and down off the floor is what actually puts people into nursing homes more than any other reason. So I know, right? I know when we're in our 20s and 30s, sometimes it's about how we look and how we feel, and maybe those six-pack abs or whatever. But at the end of the day, we really want longevity, right? Muscle is the key to longevity. We want energy. We want to show up in our lives for the people that we love. And we don't want to be just fatigued all the time. And guess what? Almost every woman I talk to, I like to say their check engine light is flashing and they have no idea where to turn because the doctor with whom they put a lot of authority on with their health, as I did, is telling them everything is normal. So they're like, I don't know where to turn because I don't know this stuff. I'm not a doctor and my doctor says everything is fine. So I want you to ask yourself as we start tonight, how is your energy? Like, are you thriving? Do you wake up in the morning like feeling just like you have all the energy in the world? You feel grateful. You're not grabbing that cup of coffee 2, 3, 4 times a day or even in the afternoon because you're crashing. Do you feel like you're alive in your relationships? Brendon Burchard talks about aliveness. We all crave aliveness. When I was going through chronic migraine, when I was going through infertility, I didn't feel very alive. I felt very, very much in a dark place. And a lot of women do. A lot of women feel this way, whether it's through some sort of chronic health struggle, through infertility, through postpartum depression, through perimenopause and menopause. And so I'm here to sort of peel back the curtain and say, hey, let's become vulnerable in the service of other women. Let's start to have these conversations, things we weren't taught in school. Let's talk about this, right? And so I want you to just really think tonight about your energy. Like, how can you improve that? because improving that is going to improve everything else about your life. It's going to improve your marriage. It's going to improve your relationships. It's going to improve how you show up in the world. So let's start with this statistic, okay? 72%, yes, I said 72, 72% of women will deal with hormone imbalance. If not before perimenopause, then during perimenopause, okay? And we'll talk more about what perimenopause is. But this is huge, my friends. And I don't know about you, but I was not taught this information in sex ed in middle school. Like my middle school sex ed class was about how to avoid teenage pregnancy. It was not about female anatomy. There was no information about how to overcome hormone imbalance or where to go or root cause medicine. Like this was just not discussed. And guess what? It really still isn't. And so it's up to thought leaders in this space, pioneers in this space, researchers in this space, and women like you and me to say, hey, like, yeah, this stinks. Like we need to learn more about it. So we're going to talk about a couple things. The main lesson I want you guys to take away tonight is this concept of hormone literacy. Sometimes people come away from calls or webinars or podcasts and they think, I know what I need to do. I just need to get the right doctor, or I just need to figure out what testing I need and then I'll be good to go. Actually, none of that matters. It's about 20% of the equation overall. What matters most, what will matter 80% of the time, is how much you know and how much you understand about how the female body should function versus how yours is functioning. So let me just tell you, when you have a certain level of hormone literacy, you can step into the right doctor's office and all of a sudden your conversation goes from, I don't know what's wrong with me. I have low energy. Are there tests we can run? How can you help me? And the doctor saying, everything looks fine over here, right? And you leave with no answers. All of a sudden, when you become hormone literate, your conversation levels up. You're able to ask the right questions, request the right testing. You're able to say, I think this is how I'm supposed to feel, but this is actually how I feel. All of a sudden, the doctor is actually able to help you because you are more literate about your body. So if nothing else, I hope you come away from this learning something so that you can ask the right questions with the right people. So let's start where we always like to start, which is the four-legged hormone chair. I do have podcasts, by the way. We have 270 podcasts. So there's a podcast on every possible subject related to hormone health. So if you ever want to go deeper on something, you can check out the Sync Your Life podcast. But I'm going to touch on this as sort of just our baseline for tonight, in case you've never heard it before. So the four-legged hormone chair, you can picture a chair just like this, your sturdy little kitchen chair that has four legs. I want you to think of this as your endocrine system. So your endocrine system is more than just your reproductive hormones. It's more than just your estrogen, progesterone, those sex hormones that we talk about in the menstrual cycle. So let's talk about what those four legs are. One leg is your cortisol. In fact, I would argue it's your most important leg of the chair. Cortisol is your survival hormone. It is your fight or flight hormone. It is produced in the adrenal glands, which are tiny little glands that sit above your kidneys. Okay, cortisol is crucial because cortisol equals survival. Another leg of your chair is your blood sugar. We all are familiar with blood sugar. We need glucose for survival. Another leg of the chair is the thyroid. I like to think of the thyroid as the thermostat. And our fourth leg of the chair is that sex hormone leg of the chair, which is our estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, LH, and FSH. So what would happen if I were to saw off just one leg of this chair? Well, your answer would probably be, well, the whole chair would wobble, right? Well, that's what happens when there's a hormone imbalance. When one leg of your chair is weaker than the others, it creates a total destabilization of that chair. And so a lot of times, symptoms of other legs of the chair can start to pop up in a hormonal imbalance situation because the chair is wobbly, which makes things really confusing, which is, in my opinion, why a lot of doctors just avoid hormones altogether. And they say, I don't know, because you can have thyroid symptoms, but your sex hormone leg of the chair is your weakest leg of the chair. So getting to that root cause, getting to, which leg of the chair is the weakest is what you really want to figure out, because then you can start to do lifestyle changes through nutrition, exercise, proper supplementation that is individual to you to get that leg stronger, to sturdy up the chair, right? But hormones are really complex. We've already said that more than once. Researchers themselves are like, no, thank you. We don't want to study that. That's too confusing. This is the reason why it's confusing, because one leg can affect all the legs. Now, let me give you an example of one thing here. This will really help maybe tie that in. So progesterone is one of your sex hormones. So it's part of one of those legs of the chair, right? Progesterone is your female fertility hormone. So it grows exponentially if you are pregnant. If you've been pregnant before, you probably remember like progesterone numbers double very quickly in pregnancy. It protects a pregnancy, right? It also protects your uterine lining. If your body is not producing enough progesterone, did you know that it can actually start to, well, obviously cause menstrual cycle dysfunction, but actually your cortisol and your progesterone actually kind of work together. So cortisol can steal from progesterone. There's something called pregnenolone, which is actually a step above progesterone. I'm not going to get too complicated with you tonight, but all of these things can interact. If your body is in a stressed state, and you're having to zap cortisol all the time for survival, maybe that's through exercise. By the way, stress doesn't have to be like work stress or relationship stress. It can be exercise. It can be, overdoing it, right? It can be notifications on your phone. Like stress comes in all different ways. If your body's in a stress state, it can actually start to steal progesterone for survival, which then depletes your progesterone, which causes menstrual cycle dysfunction. So that's just one sort of example of how the chair sort of interacts and how it's all interconnected. So I want to use that as our baseline tonight because we're going to talk about things like perimenopause. We're going to talk about things like belly fat. And it's important that we understand the basics of that four-legged chair. So I love this quote. I always have to include it anytime I'm chatting with women because it's from one of my favorites, Dr. Sarah Gottfried. She says, we need to change the conversations that women have in the doctor's office and on social media about what they eat, how they work out, and how they feel about their health and bodies. I actually just finished recording a podcast that launches tomorrow all about the harmful nature of cardio, right? Like we all love a good cardio session every once in a while, and we should. There's nothing wrong with it in moderation. But a lot of what diet culture has taught us as women is that we need to be just focused on calorie burn, how hard we can work, zone 3 heart rate, right? All the sweat, all the endorphins, push, 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 the orange theory, the burn boot camps, the F45s, the home workouts they claim they're only 20 or 30 minutes, but you're going to get crazy results. Yeah, because you're not resting and you're literally just burning the candle at both ends. Those types of things have ramifications on our health. So one thing that I like to teach women is if you actually look at the research done on women, we know the answer. We know that we have to reverse diet culture. This concept of eating less and exercising harder, let's flip it on its head. Let's eat more to fuel our body and then train smarter. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Okay, so I've already kind of touched on this, but I like to give this example. I like to use this visual. If you're like me, you're a visual learner. I like to talk about a root cause approach to your health versus a traditional approach. So a lot of times in modern medicine, and this is no shame against modern medicine. In fact, I always like to say modern medicine saved my dad's life. He was diagnosed with leukemia when I was 12 years old. And thanks to modern medicine, he is alive today. So I have nothing against modern medicine. I think there's a place for it. But I've just learned through my own journey that finding a functional approach to your health, a root cause approach, is just completely game changing, right? It's not about always just band-aiding with pharmaceuticals, which by the way, I'm on pharmaceuticals. I take pharmaceuticals for my migraines. I have nothing against it, but I also do things like magnesium and B vitamins and natural supplements to help my body as well. So I'm kind of somewhere in the middle where I like to say, we need it all. But I also think that we're doing women a huge disservice if we only give them the modern medicine approach, if we don't help them also figure out the root cause or what leg of that chair is the weakest to help them on their journey. So I like to use this example, right? Yeah, the best I can come up with is thyroid. This happens almost every day. I get a message from a woman who's like, hey, what do you think? They show me their lab work and I'm like, oh goodness, I think you might have the wrong doctor, because modern medicine looks at something like thyroid as really just, is your house on fire? Are you alive? Is there a heartbeat? Versus are you optimal? Okay. So let me give you an example. So we just recently, I was doing a health consult with a woman alongside the doctor that I'll mention later. And the woman was like, I've seen my doctor. I've even seen my endocrinologist. Her TSH was, I think, 4 point something. And a good TSH range is between 1 to 2. And her doctor didn't even mention it. They were like, well, everything's normal. You're in the normal range. Friends, normal on blood work testing is considered to be, it's literally taken from the pool of people that have had that test done. So it's literally just a wide range of all the people that have ever had the test done. Healthy people, unhealthy people. So if you've ever looked at lab work and you look down on the little tiny font at the bottom, it'll say that the normal range is like 0 to 400 or whatever, for something. And you're like, 0 to 400, well, what's optimal? Right? So we don't just want to have a heartbeat. We want to be optimal. And so this woman was like, I'm really struggling. She was having cold hands and feet, hair loss, libido issues. She had all kinds of things going on. Her doctor told her everything's normal because her house wasn't yet on fire. And yet as soon as she worked with the functional doctor here in our sync program, the doctor was like, no, 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 we need to get ahead of this because I see matches in your basement that are laying next to some newspaper, right? And I think there might be a fire coming. So it's just a different approach. It's saying, hey, let's look at all your lab work, which by the way, blood work is not highly accurate for anything aside from thyroid and blood sugar. Otherwise, we want to be looking at urine and saliva, which most doctors don't do. And so it's looking at that information and it's saying, where is there a potential fire, right? Where do we see the chair becoming wobbly? Where are the pieces that we can kind of pop in and help so that you don't get to house on fire status? And so that's the way that I like to describe root cause medicine. So like I said, most exercise and nutrition research has been done on men until now. We now finally know more. And I say when we know better, we can do better. So let's start by talking just about the menstrual cycle. And I realize that there's probably women listening to this who are on IUDs, who are on birth control pills, who maybe are post-menopause. And so you're like, how does this apply to me? I'll touch on those as well. So in the average menstrual cycle, right, which we all get sometime around, I think I started my period around the age of 14. The average age right now has moved up to 11 due to endocrine disruption, which we talked about in our recent hormone health group. And we're starting to see that type of thing happen because of things like environmental estrogens that are wreaking havoc on our hormonal systems. And so from the time we start menses until all the way through perimenopause to menopause, when we are having menstrual cycles, we have a sort of rhythm to us. And so I like to tell women that, you know, men are circadian and women are too, right? We usually sleep at night, we're awake during the day, but women get this extra thing. We get this extra superpower that I like to call our infradian rhythm, meaning that we actually oftentimes will align with the moon. So I might have just blown your mind when I talked to this group of ladies last week. They were like, what? You're telling me that my menstrual cycle aligns to the moon? Yes. If the moon can rise the tides, it can certainly alter your menstrual hormones. And so a lot of women find that they ovulate around a full moon and bleed around a new moon. And the other percentage of women, usually around 30% of women, are the opposite, where they actually will ovulate around the new moon and bleed around the full moon. So by the way, if you're thinking to yourself like, oh, I don't know about me, like if you track your cycle, feel free to check it out. You might be close. It doesn't have to be right on, but usually it's within a couple of days. If you're not, it usually is indicative of how much indoor time you're getting. So if you're somebody who wants to kind of get your cycle back into rhythm, step outside more. Nature is your friend. Do some earthing, look up at the sunlight, like walk outside. The more engaged in natural light you are, the more infradian you become. So I don't have time to go super deep into that, but that's just a little tip. So the menstrual cycle is something that, you're looking at this here. These are three of our hormones: estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. We also have LH and FSH. I wanted to keep this as simple as I could for this call. But if you were to look at the female hormones over the course of a month cycle, it looks like multiple roller coasters superimposed on each other, right? So it's kind of confusing. But if you really look at it from phase to phase, which I'm going to teach you right now, you'll see that it's actually quite simple to understand. We have high hormone phases, which you can see are the two bumps in the cycle, and we have low hormone phases. So as the menstrual cycle begins, the first full day of your flow is considered day one of your cycle. In those first 4 to 5 days of your menstrual cycle, usually when women are still bleeding, hormones are the lowest. So we know that at that stage of the cycle, your physiology is most similar to a man's, because a man has steady state hormones, right? He does not have highs and lows. He does not have rises and falls. So that's when we really need to be focused on a certain form of training. We know that strength training is best in that time of the cycle. As estrogen starts to rise, estrogen is your confident hormone. I like to say, she's your best friend who's confident, but if she gets a little too cocky, she becomes toxic, right? And so estrogen is the same way. We like her. She gets us out and about. She's our social hormone. She raises our libido, but too much of estrogen can actually be a bad thing and can become toxic as well. So estrogen starts to rise, preparing for ovulation. As you can see, the big peak in purple here on the screen around day 12 to 14 of your cycle. That rise in estrogen will actually trigger luteinizing hormone, LH, and follicle stimulating hormone, FSH, for ovulation to occur. So ovulation in a textbook 28-day cycle, which almost no woman ever has, ovulation will occur around day 14. By the way, like I said, some women ovulate day 7, some women ovulate day 20. Everybody's unique. But for a textbook purposes, around day 14 of the cycle. So when hormones are really high, we change up the way we're training because we want our body to focus on ovulation. Ovulation is our 5th vital sign. Ovulation is really, really key in how our reproductive system is even working as a whole. So we've really got to dial it in with ovulation. After ovulation, estrogen kind of bottoms out quickly. There's a sharp, drastic decline in estrogen upon egg release. And then progesterone, which is the green line here on the chart, becomes the dominant hormone. It becomes the queen in the second half of the cycle. This is why you might feel like in the first half of your cycle, your libido's rising, you're ready for date night, you want to go out with the girls, you're more sociable. But after ovulation in the second half of your cycle leading up to your period, you're more introverted. You'd rather just hang out and watch some Netflix documentaries, curl up in your favorite sweatpants, go to sleep a little earlier or sleep in a little bit later. Progesterone is your calming hormone, right? So the things that might have concerned you in the first half of your cycle, like your husband leaving his clothes on the floor, may not affect you as the same way in the second half of your cycle. This is why I think women are so complex to our spouses. So this happens, right? And so we have these sort of highs and lows, and then the cycle starts over again. This is just a basic overview. But the bottom line is our energy ebbs and flows. I really wish someone had told me at 17 that I was supposed to feel high and low. I wasn't meant to be steady state. I'm not built like a man, right? And the more that we can educate our young daughters on this very information, the easier it becomes for us to change the world with this information. Because I don't know about you, I actually spoke to a girls' basketball team, a high school basketball team. And the girls were like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense as to why I'll have a good game and then I have a bad game, or why I don't feel so great when I'm performing on my period. Yes, this is the information that women need to understand. So if we now know that these low hormone phases demand a certain type of training regimen from us, and the high hormone phases are different and require a different style of training, then we know that we should actually be paying attention to the menstrual cycle when we design our exercise regimen. And so 99% of fitness regimens out there, right? Whether it's, like I said before, the Orange Theory classes, the boot camps, the home workouts, 99% of them are created for male physiology. I get questions every day from women. How do I change this program to fit me? Or how do I cycle sync this? You can't is the easiest answer, because it wasn't designed for that. And so we have to be looking at ways that we can optimize this and work with our female physiology instead of against it. Now, the same thing goes for nutrition. We know that certain foods are more helpful in different phases of our cycle. We know that cruciferous vegetables actually help detoxify estrogen. So when estrogen is high, we up the cruciferous vegetables. We know that seed cycling is really important for women and can actually boost natural hormones naturally. So there's lots of things we can be doing with nutrition, with what I call the 5 fundamentals of hormone balance as it pertains to the different phases of our cycle. Now, health is individual. So it's individual. What works for me will not work for you necessarily, right? And so I hate it when people see on social media, they're like, oh, what supplement are you drinking? Like, what is that? Should I do that? Or what vitamin is that? Or what, it's different. Everybody is different. And that's why we all need proper testing. I wish that it was the norm for every woman to have root cause testing every year with their OBGYN. Every woman should be doing root cause Dutch style testing with their doctors, but it's just not the case. Again, modern medicine is looking for your house to be on fire, make sure you're not dying, as opposed to living optimally. The good news is that this is accessible to us when we know better. When we know this is accessible, we can then do better, right? We can work with the right doctor. We can ask the right questions. We can become more hormone literate. We can get that proper testing, and we can start to even cycle sync if we want to. Which reminds me, I didn't touch on birth control, IUD, and menopause, so I'll come back to that. But the bottom line is, it is time to dig into your root causes. It's time for you to figure out, like, why is my energy off? Why can't I lose this weight? Why am I gaining the belly fat? Why am I, not feeling the way that I did in my 20s? Every time, it's almost always women who've just turned 40. It seems like they'll say, I don't know what happened. Like, all of a sudden I turned 40 and things shifted, right? I just turned 40 myself last year, so I get it. Like, I feel the same way. But the things that were working for us in our 20s are not the things that are going to work for us in our 40s. Why? Because our physiology is changing, right? We're entering perimenopause, which I'll talk about next. But because our body's changing, we've got to pay attention to what it truly needs. So before I go any further, let me touch on, because in case there is someone listening who says, what about me? I'm on an IUD or I'm on birth control. If that's the case for you, cycle syncing when it comes to your fitness is not necessarily the same. because when you're on hormonal birth control, your body is sort of in a flatline state of hormones, right? The whole purpose of birth control is to stop ovulation from happening, which means there are no highs and lows. The synthetic hormones that are in the oral contraceptives, in the birth control pill, will literally just stop those rises from happening and suppress your natural hormones. They're called synthetic hormones. They give them to you in high enough doses that they suppress your natural hormones. So there's really no highs and lows to leverage. But that doesn't mean that we can't still train the way that women should train, which is with progressive overload. We know the different styles that will work for women on birth control as well. Now, if you're post-menopause, right, or if you are on birth control, my recommendation to you would be really to pay attention to that infradian rhythm. We are lunar beings as women. So the more that you can tap into this moon energy, and hopefully I haven't lost you. Hopefully you're not like, oh my gosh, this girl's hippy dippy. The more you can tap into the moon energy, the more you're going to start to notice gains as far as your energy goes. So we know that as the moon is growing in brightness in the sky, so is our energy. This is the simplest way I can tell you. It has to do with our neurotransmitters, serotonin and melatonin, right? You've probably heard of melatonin from sleep. Serotonin is your feel-good hormone. When the moon is brighter in the sky, we have more serotonin and less melatonin. This is why kids are crazy in school on a full moon, right? Not very good sleep the night before due to those lower levels of melatonin. The opposite is also true. As the moon wanes and becomes dimmer into the waning moon and new moon, our energy depletes. So we can tap into those energies with our training, and I promise it makes a difference. You can ask any of the women in my course who are postmenopausal who sync with the moon. Okay, so I want to touch on perimenopause and belly fat, which kind of go hand in hand, because I know this is a common question. This is something that people are looking forward to having answered. So if you think back to that whole four-legged chair, right? If you think back to that, what I want to do is I want to describe for you what's happening in perimenopause. So I think the first thing that's most important to say is that menopause, right? I hear this all the time. I hear women will say like, oh, I've been in menopause for 3 years, or I've been having hot flashes in menopause for 5 years. No, that's not true. So menopause is a birthday. It is a moment in time that is 365 days from your last period. So right now, the average age for menopause in American women is 51, right? But basically, you've not had a period for a year, right? You get to 11 months, your period comes back. Nope, not menopause yet. You got to wait 1 full year to call it menopause. The 10 years or more leading up to menopause is called perimenopause. And it's literally, yes, it is like a decade long. And my best analogy for you for this is, have you ever been on a cruise ship? Like I took this cruise boat one time. Notice I said one time because I was so seasick. I was like, never again. That's another story for another day. But we were in Miami, Florida. The cruise ship was leaving the dock, and we were like, the whole crowd on the boat is like, woohoo, yeah, here we go. We're leaving the cruise. We're leaving the dock. And like an hour later, it felt like we'd only gone like 10 feet, right? Like you could still see the land. We're just like idling out there, like trying to leave the dock, leave land. That is your ovaries during perimenopause. They're like, okay, it's time for us to go, but we're going to give you a nice, long, idle speed warning that we're off to sea. Okay. So in these next 8 to 10 years, we're going to start making less and less of your sex hormones, and you're just going to have to figure it out. Got it? So in perimenopause, things become crazy. Dr. Laura Briden calls it second puberty for a reason. Things get a little wacky, right? Our cycles could get shorter, they could get longer. A lot of times that will happen back to back. They'll become shorter first, then they'll become longer. They'll become irregular. They might become heavier. They might become lighter. They might be different in color. Like things just change, and women feel like they're going crazy. And so, like I said before, the average 40-year-old woman will say, oh my gosh, I don't know what happened. Things have shifted, right? I don't feel myself. My period's all over the place. I've gained this weight in my belly. I don't know how to get rid of it. And they immediately think, I must need to work harder. I must need to do what I was doing in my 20s. I'm going to go join that Orange Theory, or I'm going to go, take the boot camp classes. I'm going to start doing the cardio. I need to burn more calories. I'm going to cut back on the carbs, or I'm going to cut back on the fat, whatever the case is, right? And they start to do these things thinking with that diet culture mentality that that's what needs to happen in order for them to lose the weight. But what's actually happening in your body, let me pause. I'm going to ask this rhetorical question because I can't actually see you because I'm looking at my screen. But if I were to ask you the question, Does your body still produce sex hormones after menopause? Your answer should be yes. Even after menopause, you have estrogen, you have testosterone, you have progesterone. So if your ovaries are no longer producing them, what is? The answer is your adrenal glands. Those little tiny glands that we mentioned at the beginning of this webinar that sit above your kidneys that are responsible for what? Cortisol, survival, fight or flight, stress. Now they have been handed the baton by the ovaries. Ovaries are like, okay, peace out. It's been real. Your turn now. And so the ovaries become extra taxed during this decade of life. They become extra taxed. Now, not only are they responsible for your stress response, they're now also responsible for your sex hormone production. And this is where the problem lies. Because most women, what did I say before? They start to do all the things to work harder and eat less, which puts their body into a state of survival mode, puts their body into a state of fight or flight, puts their body into a state of lack of recovery or lack of stress management. And when that happens, all of a sudden the belly fat holds on. Why? Because your body is freaking looking to survive. It's like, I better keep this around. Goodness, she's working me pretty hard. I think I need to keep this belly for warmth this winter, right? Like it's literally trying to survive. And so if you can embrace that, if you can say, okay, this is just a stressful decade of life, given how my female physiology is transitioning and changing, just like it did at age 13, it's doing it again. I need to give it grace. Not only could we have a whole conversation here on self-love, but we could also have a whole conversation here on what it looks like to recover well, what it looks like to become more mobile, what it looks like to build more muscle, which I'll tell you is not riding the Peloton, doing the Orange Theory classes, I don't know, jump knee tucks, all the things like that is not the way you build muscle. You build muscle through proper protein intake, adequate healthy fats. You build muscle through strength training, through progressive overload, through adequate recovery between sets so that you can actually engage power. You do these things from age 40 to 50 because this is your last shot to build that muscle. I hate to say it, but literally we, as women, we lose so much muscle. I usually know the statistic off the top of my head, but I can't remember it right now. But we lose a lot of muscle in that final decade before menopause. And so if we can work against that, if we can really start to say, no, I want to build muscle now. I want to step into this power. I'm going to work smarter, not harder. I'm not going to just do all the cardio. We can actually start to leverage and reach that maximum energy and age better, which remember, we started this with, we measure everything in energy. We measure everything having to do with longevity. And so if we really keep that in mind, we've got to change the narrative. We've got to change what's going on up here. We've got to change what we see in diet culture. We've got to say, okay, maybe what I'm doing isn't working. Maybe I need to work differently. I need to work with my physiology. So I'm going to go over just a few. I think I covered it all. Perimenopause, belly fat, four-legged chair, yeah, we don't have time tonight to go into deep stuff on like testing. I know people always have questions about like, well, what test do I need done? I wish that was a really simple answer, but it's a little bit more complex. But I do want to give you just an overview of the SYNC program. I want to give you an overview of just what it might look like to step into that. If you do want to go deeper with your own hormone literacy, if you do want to work with a hormone-informed, menopause-informed doctor, if you do want to get that proper testing, if you do want to do something like cycle syncing or moon syncing or really engage in the type of exercise and nutrition that females need, then hopefully you'll stick around and listen to this. So I'm going to go through these. Then I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll be able to see any questions that you guys have shared. Okay, so what I did was I just put together 3 slides to show you the different options for getting started with SYNC. Okay, so like I said at the beginning, the SYNC course is really where I started. It was me taking all the information from the struggles that I had had and putting it into a digestible educational course. Now, some women say, I don't have time for that. I don't know when I would ever sit down and listen to the, no, I'm telling you that if you've enjoyed this tonight, if you feel like you've learned something tonight, this is exactly how I handle the course. I cut out all the BS. I teach everything to you like it is, very straight, very direct, short videos. You can even watch them on your phone, listen to them when you're in the car. And I also give you downloadable files. I give you a proper testing guide with all the testing that you needed to do so that you can take it to your doctor and say, here, I want this done. I give you proper supplementation guides. There's over 13 weeks of nutrition plans that are phase specific based on your menstrual cycle. We have supplement guides. We have cycle synced fitness plans. There are 6 modules of videos. And I've even included, I don't know, at least a dozen interviews with functional medicine doctors. They're literally video interviews. So a lot of times, when I do a podcast interview, I video record it and I actually go, like, we do a 2-hour interview, but only an hour makes it on the podcast. So I give you that content in the course so that you can really get to know all of these things that the doctors are looking for when they're taking a root cause approach. So the course is really just everything you need as far as understanding your body better, right? And asking the right questions and getting that proper testing so that you can have that leveled up conversation with your doctor in the doctor's office. So $259 for the sync course. I couldn't get this photo to load. So I have this really pretty photo of Dr. Page, but for some reason it wasn't letting me upload it. So we'll just picture I'll show you Dr. Page when we're done here. I'll pull up a picture, but Dr. Page is our resident hormone health doctor with the sync program. She offers this just exclusively to, women that I know. So it's just referrals from me, from my community, because she wants to do us this good service. So she actually runs Signature Primary Health and Wellness in Columbus, Ohio, and is not only Mary Claire Haver certified, she's menopause certified. She goes above and beyond to do classes through IFM to really understand root cause medicine. She works through Rupa Health. If you're familiar with Rupa Health, she can do root cause testing. She can do all the things. She's very knowledgeable in bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, which, by the way, I'm a huge fan of. If you guys have questions on that, I'm happy to answer. But we are literally changing the lives of so many women. We've done 120 total consults in the last 6 months. Prior to this, we were only doing these for the women who took the course. Now we're opening it up to the public as well. And I am just like, every single time I'm on a consult with Dr. Page, my mind is blown. I learned something. The women are coming back saying, how do I get more of this? How can I work with her as my regular doctor? Like, this is amazing. I feel heard. I feel listened to. I feel like I know what to ask. The conversation is so amazing. I'm getting guidance on my sleep, on my bio-individual supplementation, on my nutrition. Like, everything is so comprehensive. It is completely different, I'm sure, than anything you've experienced. And to give you a little hindsight or a little overview, I sat in the first 120 consults myself because I was like, I cannot associate the Sync brand that I've created with a doctor that I don't believe in, So I told her, I was like, I want to bring you on board, but like, I have to know that like, you're the one. So I dated Dr. Page through these virtual consults for 8 months. And I feel like at this point we can finish each other's sentences because we are so in alignment. And the thing that I love the most is that she meets you where you are. She meets you where you are, and she's able to give you the insight. And also, she always likes to say, she's very, very, what's the word she uses? Passionate, I guess, about helping women just understand their own health values. Like, what do you value? Like, what do you want to try? What do you not want to try? Right? Like, she's so, so good with that. So we do offer a 2 virtual consult package with Dr. Page. It is $625. If you want to work with an implementation coach, which is, I highly recommend. Our implementation coaches are Sync certified coaches. So they're certified through my program. They have been coached by Dr. Page. They don't sit in your consult with you, but they do work with you between the 2 consults. So once you meet with Dr. Page, there's a protocol that's given to you that's customized for you. I think it's around 18 pages. It's awesome. And it's not overwhelming, I promise. It's just everything you need. That implementation coach takes that and then meets with you through Zoom. They check in with you through email weekly, and they make sure that you're on pace for your follow-up appointment so that you can really have an effective follow-up so that you know that you're making progress on your health goals. This is what's missing in modern medicine, my friends. Like, women don't have accountability. They don't have people to ask questions. They don't have the right doctor. It's a hot mess. So we've taken all the guesswork out for you with this. And I guess Kelsey's photo didn't load either. So Kelsey Linsman is our Sync fitness trainer. We partnered with her to launch the Sync fitness program in May of this year. It is I need to stop saying it's a 28-day program because really we want you to do it for 90 days, but it is a 28-day cycle syncing fitness program. It includes phase-specific nutrition guidance. So I not only give you meals, recipes, grocery lists, all the things for that full 28 days, but it's foods that you would actually be eating, that you should be eating in alignment with different phases of your cycle as well. So we're really taking the guesswork out of what to eat and when, how to train and when, And Kelsey has put together an awesome program through an app that we just can deliver to you to do in your own home with kettlebells, dumbbells. Those are the only equipment that you need. So I like to say, yes, it's 28 days, but we're actually asking women to do 3 full months of it because it is progressive overload. So the whole concept of progressive overload is to slowly become stronger, to increase your weight, to increase your range of motion so that you are actually building muscle. You can do that in 28 days, but it's more about doing it longer over time, right? So we want you to do it for 3 months before moving on. And we're getting ready to actually launch a fitness membership as well. So those are the different options for getting started with Sync. And I wanted to make sure that I show you that we do have the ability for you to bundle these things together where you do the course. If you're like, I need it all. You're like, I feel like crap. I've got to get this figured out. My husband hates me right now because I'm so moody or whatever the case is, or I'm in perimenopause hell. I need to figure this out. Whatever the case is for you, if you want to do the hormone literacy course, if you want to do the consults with Dr. Page too, you're like, also, please just get me started on the right fitness and nutrition because I think I'm doing everything backwards. If you want to do it all, we actually have a $100 discount we can offer you tonight. It's a 24-hour deal. It's $931 for the whole thing. So everything I just mentioned to you, it's $100 off to bundle them all together. If you want to do this, make sure you reach out to your Sync certified coach that invited you here, and they can actually get you the link to do that. So without further ado, I want to give you guys some free resources as well. One is if you haven't already taken the hormone imbalance quiz, highly recommend you do this. So the purpose of this quiz is to show you what leg of your chair could be the weakest, right? So if you're like, I don't know, like, I don't even know if I'm dealing with a hormone imbalance. What if this isn't hormones for me? You know, whatever the case is, take the hormone imbalance quiz. These are legitimate symptoms. This was actually designed by an apothecary pharmacist who works with women in their bioidentical hormone replacement therapy journey. And this is what he uses to actually figure out what path they need. So this is a legitimate quiz. It's not intended to diagnose or prescribe, of course, nothing here is, but it is there for you to say, oh, well, maybe that is what's going on. Maybe I do need to ask more questions about that. So you can find the quiz at sync.jennyswisher.com. And then, like I mentioned, we have 270 episodes of the podcast. We talk about, oh gosh, I guarantee that if you threw a subject out at me on hormone health, I guarantee we've covered it. Everything from red light therapy, saunas, cold plunges, vitamins, magnesium, sleep, anxiety, brain fog, perimenopause, belly fat, oral health as root cause medicine, parasites, all the things, like 270 episodes of awesomeness there as well. So I'm going to stop my share because I might have missed questions. And if you guys do have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. Okay. Okay, perfect. I didn't miss anything. So hopefully you guys got something out of this. Hopefully you learned something that you can take with you into your own health journey. And hopefully I didn't talk too much. I have a tendency to talk a lot. So any questions from anybody here? I want to make sure I give you guys time for that as well. I'll take a drink. My throat was getting dry. Okay. So informative. You're welcome, Shireen. Yes, and I know there were a couple people asking, yes, it's recorded, and I will be sending out the recording via email. So it will be going out probably late tonight. We do have, like I said, if you guys are interested in the bundle, we are offering that for 24 hours-ish. So midnight tomorrow night. So it's technically 26 hours, but midnight tomorrow night for the bundle if you're interested. But otherwise, there's really no wrong place to start. Like if you're somebody who's like, I think I'm doing it wrong with my exercise and my nutrition, start with Sync Fitness. If you're somebody who's like, I really need answers because I'm getting nowhere with my doctor, start with the consults. But really, like I said at the beginning, if you don't know where to start, hormone literacy is always the best first place because it's going to give you those up-leveled conversations, those up-leveled questions to ask, and really, really, really help you get to the root cause of what's going on for you. Thank you, Lauren. Okay, Missy, Julie, Lauren, Courtney, any questions? It's always so hard to figure out what to talk about because I'm like, oh my gosh, we could talk about testing, we could talk about supplements, we could talk about, but you know, I've just got to do the highlights here. This is all information that I wish I had had, you guys. I wish I had had it. I went through 5.5 years of chronic migraine. Um, I guess it was 6 years of infertility. And I'll be honest, like I went into my infertility doctor's office. I had never really tracked my cycle. I didn't understand what it meant to track cervical mucus or body temperature. I went in blindly, ended up having endometriosis surgery. My husband had surgery. Like I feel like my teen years and my 20s into my early 30s were just like me being at the mercy of doctors that didn't necessarily look at root cause. And it wasn't until I was around when my oldest daughter was born, really, that I started to really say, no, I'm going to take control. I'm going to take the reins. I need to learn more about my body, find the right people. And like I said at the very beginning, you can't unlearn this. Like once you learn this, you can't see the world differently. At least I can't. And so I feel really passionate about sharing this with other women, helping them step into who they need to be because there's too many women out there who are suffering. I was just at the pool today with my kids. They're starting school. Yay. Woohoo this week. So we went to the pool and I overheard a conversation of women. They were kind of joking around about I'll sleep when I'm dead and the caffeine crisis, right? Like what do you use for caffeine and just the fatigue. Like there's so many women just foggy all the time. Like they're foggy all the time, or they're dealing with headaches, or they're dealing with painful periods, or whatever the case is, or the weight gain that they can't explain. And it's in my opinion, it's all figure outable, but we're the ones that have to figure that out. So it starts there. Perfect. Okay, you guys. Well, if there are any questions, if you have a question that was not answered tonight, or maybe it's a personal question and you're like, I don't really want to ask it on the webinar, feel free to reach out to me directly. You can email me at jenny@jennyswisher.com, or you can reach out to me on social media and I'm happy to answer. If you have any questions about the Sync program or anything that we're offering, this is something pretty great that we're building, right? This amazing team of women who have come alongside me and said, hey, I want to share this message too, is a really powerful, powerful group. And I'm super excited they invited you here. So thank you guys so much for being on here. Again, like I said, the website, or sorry, the recording will go out tonight. So the website, so just reach out to Missy, I can connect you. Yeah, anybody listening, if you want to reach out to your Sync certified coach that invited you here, we can get you set up with the link or the discount codes necessary for everything we chatted about tonight. So just reach out to your person. All right, you guys, I'm going to hang it up for now. I hope you guys have a great week, a great start to the school year if you've got kids in school. And yeah, I hope we see you soon in the community. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.